Thank you for joining us for episode 2 of Chained. If you didn't see episode 1, please go and check it out on the link above. So Chained is a brand new podcast. As I say, it's only episode 2, and we are this is Dark Matters in co-production with Jacked In, and I'm joined here by Jack of Jacked In, and my name's Carl, owner of Dark Matters. So Chained, just to give everybody an update after the first episode, which got us up and running. Jack, do you want to just give us a quick overview of Chained?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Carl said, we're trying to build the biggest movie chain in existence, connected via actors within said movies. So last week, to start us off, I chose American Werewolf in London. I chose Jenny Agutter as my pick for actress. So we're on to our second episode now. So the rules, for those of you not in the know, Carl had to pick someone from my movie, American Werewolf in London, and he will be talking about another movie they were in for this episode. So Carl's pick was Brian Glover, and his movie for this week is Alien 3, which I'm sure is a very controversial pick, but I can't wait to get my teeth sunk into it.
Yes, my phallic-shaped alien mouth to get stuck into the skull of this recording. And I've come dressed. Jack, what do you think? Ready to go? Look at this.
It's very
Beautiful,
nice. It
right?
really, you should have got it as tight as possible, so it was literally hugging you. But there we go.
And maybe there. Yeah, we are going to be talking about Alien 3, the much maligned, very controversial, and possibly now a slightly overrated Alien 3 from director extraordinaire David Fincher, obviously his directing debut. The format of the show, as per episode 1, we're basically going to be doing a quick what we've been watching and talk about a few various films and stuff we've watched recently. Then we're going to talk about our featured review, which is Alien 3, and then we'll have a quick discussion around Brian Glover, his career, and any sort of highlights. After that, Jack will then tell me from, as I mentioned in episode 1, that smorgasbord of choice that I gave him in Alien 3, which actor he has picked for our next episode, which I'm very excited about because I don't know. So there we go.
Yeah, so like he said, first we're going to do a bit of housekeeping. So we're going to get off to basically discuss what movies we've seen recently, because I'm always fascinated to hear what Carl's watched, and hopefully vice versa. But yeah, so we're going to basically run through, well, a few things that we've both been watching recently. But first off, I mentioned in the last episode a movie that I'd watched in the cinema for the first ever time, a movie that I've always wanted to see on the big screen, and that is Sleepaway Camp. Carl hadn't seen it, and he has since watched it, so I can't wait to find out his thoughts.
I just had a blast. I had a blast watching that film. It's just complete insanity, but in that sort of 80s way that 80s slashers seem to, they're always enjoyable to go back to. But Sleepaway Camp was just kind of on another level. It's almost like every element of the film was massively exaggerated. The characters are just, there's characters that you just wouldn't get in any other slasher movie. Yeah. I think you flagged last time the fact that it was actual children that were in this, and there's some crazy kills.
Not 30-year-olds pretending to be children, like literal, like actual children,
Yeah, actual children, and horrible things happening to some of these children, and which I thought was really enjoyable. Now, as I mentioned last time, I unfortunately knew the ending, so that twist didn't get me. But right from
I still think it doesn't take anything away, like because I know someone else that watched the movie as well, and they knew the ending, but they said like that took nothing away from the enjoyment. It is a shame, but
because the ending is so sudden, so brutal, so graphic, you just. Yeah. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it. And the thing was, I got just as much enjoyment. I watched it with about 5 people, and I got more enjoyment out of watching them not being able to figure out what was going on, and them trying to guess who the murderer was and what the twist was going to be. That when it actually came, it landed pretty well. I mean, it was a difficult film. I was watching it with people who aren't necessarily like massive geeky horror fans like me, and so they were all a little bit kind of critical of some of the sort of naff elements of it, because it's by no means is this like a high quality film, right? I mean,
not at all. I mentioned that last time,
It is properly low budget, like I say, very crazy written. Makes really weird story decisions. But there was stuff in there that we all got an absolute kick out of. There was no doubt about it, and I could see that they were sort of enjoying it, even if they thought it was because it was rubbish. But I thought I didn't think it was rubbish at all. I thought it was. There was some production value problems, but I thought as a slasher, it was way more interesting than a lot of the 80s fare you usually get. I would happily watch that over most of the Friday the 13th.
Oh yeah, for sure. It is a cheesy 80s slasher, but I think I was mentioning last time. There's certain things what just make it like it just redeems it so much. I mean, for one, the practical effects and the makeup of the death, like that snake crawling out the guy's mouth. It was just like these effects have no business being that good within that movie sort of thing, because you do get the terrible acting in between, but I don't know. It's kind of like the certain elements of the script even which aren't cheesy, and it's actors, it's the kid characters. I have no doubt in my mind that they just took them aside and say, "We want you to do this in this scene," as opposed to giving them lines, because it just seems like the legit what they're saying.
But I think for me, the standout things that just stuck with me is one. Although they did use kids, some of the kids were also still like 25. And so there was this really weird thing where suddenly kids who clearly looked like they were 13 were hanging out with these people who were 25 and all meant to be the same age and best friends. And that way through, you're just going, who's the camp leader? Hold on. Like, how old are they? And the other thing that we all commented on, and it's just so obvious, and it wasn't really until afterwards I really thought about it. It broke the standard 80s slasher rule of it was always the women getting their kit off. It broke the rule because basically it's a film that is basically ogling the men all the way through. There's no women with naked. There's no sort of flesh revealed. All the flesh on display is men. Tiny shorts. The hilarious
crop tops.
Crop tops. I mean, I'd never seen an 80s slasher film that looked like Sleepaway Camp, because it almost felt like it was a reaction to 80s slashers. But at the same time, I'm not entirely sure it was. And but it was absolutely hilarious. The fashion was the campest I have ever seen from the 80s.
No pun intended.
I mean, it was the 80s in full camp mode, and I mean Sleepaway Camp. I mean, you couldn't put that in bigger, in better comments. It was amazing. It was so much fun to watch.
For sure.
And really just a shout out for two of the maddest characters I've seen in a film in a long time, which was the weird aunt, who I just wondered whether she just thought she was acting in a different movie to everybody else, because she was just brilliant at the beginning. The one at the beginning.
No, that simply won't do at all. No.
That was some of the weirdest acting choices I've ever seen. And the other, like, the most on-the-nose pedo chef.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
That character, like, it was like you heard the collective jaws hitting the floor when we were watching it because of the lines that this guy is given. I mean, it was like zero subtlety. It was like negative subtlety.
Will you move your buttons? Come on, you're going out overtime here.
Look at all that young, fresh chicken. Where I come from, we call them baldies. Makes your mouth water, don't it?
Artie, they're too young to even understand what's on your mind.
Then, good buddy, there ain't no such thing as being too young. You're just too old.
It's like the camp bus arrives and he's literally just going
straight away grabbing his crotch and talking about like age not meaning a thing and stuff, and
literally everybody else around him is just like, oh, pedo chef.
Slapping their knees, you old scamp, go on, get out of here.
Oh man.
But an absolute, like I say, not going to spoil the ending. If same as last time, if you haven't seen it, like absolutely get involved. Or if you know the ending and you think, well, it's pointless watching, not at all. It takes nothing away from the enjoyment, as Carl's demonstrated.
Yeah, 100%. It's like I think what I wasn't expecting was just the smash. It's not spoiling anything, but there was a smash freeze frame, and that freeze frame will live with me forever.
It's such it's brilliant. It gives you no time to think. The freeze frame that he's talking about, it's the ending, and then you're like, wait, what? And then it just stays on that frame for the entire credits.
The entire credits.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Really, really interesting choices on that film. So, so yes, I'm glad we both got to talk about that so soon into the show. Yeah, that's my first one. So, Jack, yeah, tell us something you've been watching in the interim.
So something I've watched recently. It's just come onto Netflix. Well, depending on when this goes out, but it's been shown left, right, and center. And it was one of those instances where I was watching with my partner and we couldn't figure out what to watch, but been advertised everywhere. So I thought I'd reluctantly give it a watch. And that is Chicken Run, the sequel, Dawn of the Nugget.
Ooh, the Mel Gibson-less Chicken Run,
The
right?
Mel Gibson and Julia Swalfa-less, the two mains, basically all the charm that was in the first one, voice-wise, removed and replaced. I'm a very cynical person when I go into sequels, especially when they've been recast or if they look. And I went in sort of, I'm trying to get better, but I went into it and it was what I expected, if not worse, is the best way to put it. So it was straight to Netflix, unlike the first one, which was DreamWorks and Pathé. It was put straight onto Netflix, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad. And it's picking up sort of where the last one left off. Obviously, all the chickens are free. It's centered more on Rocky and Ginger's child in this one, who, although is free, longs for what's outside of the freedom. So ironically, she feels like she's in somewhat of a cage. The story's just so bad. The story's so bad. I think charmless is the best way to describe it. I don't know if you've seen it at all before I go off on my rant.
No. I don't think I was planning on seeing it, to be honest. I just thought, cynical Netflix cash grab.
Yeah. It's. I went in. I don't even think it had the best intentions. Like sometimes things just fall short. But sometimes you get good sequels that do have different voices and you don't notice, like Return of Jafar, like little nod there. It didn't have Ron Williams, but still enjoyed. But it's and I forget her name, and this is terrible. But Zach Levi, the guy that does Shazam, he takes over the Mel Gibson role, which is the one I was more cynical about. And you know what? He does a good job of sounding like Mel Gibson. Like, it's a very unique voice that Mel has. He just has the Mel Gibson voice, and Zach Levi does a good... Levy, let's go with Levy. Does a good job of sounding like Mel Gibson. The problem is the personality of the claymation that was done in the first one seemed to be designed around the voices and the charismaticness of the voices. This one very much looks like the voices and the actions are two very separate things. Not only that, but I think it went in with the mentality that bigger's better. So the first one was a lot more intimate and a brilliant nod to The Great Escape. Only, like, this one just seems to be everything's bigger. The farm in the second one's bigger. The technology in the second one's bigger, and it's returning so many characters that it feels like the first one, but done. It does everything the first one did, but worse, even though it went...
Does it feel that literally the only idea they had was that? Like, just make it bigger?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, some of the characters returned. Spoiler, skip 10 seconds or 20 seconds if you don't want this spoiled.
For that film, everyone is done.
Yeah. A film that everyone doesn't want spoiled. So the villain's Mrs. Tweedy. Again, she comes back. She's got a new husband this time, and shock, she's wanting to build a machine that turns chicken and not pies this time, but chicken nuggets. So that's why it's called the Dawn of the Nugget. And the invention's more... It's like I say, all the charm and even the feels. Like the first one gets you in the feels, like you sympathize with the struggle that these chicken face on the farm, and it's got emotion in it. It's got heart. Second one just doesn't have any of that. You don't feel for any of the characters, and it's a massive shame. Although the animation's still impressive, that's a massive... There's aspects of it that just feel rushed, and like I say, the voices don't seem like the match. They don't, because they weren't originally intended for them. And the fact that it's a different director, it's not your man Park and Lord that did the first. It's like someone else behind it. I think it's the guy that co-directed Flushed Away. So he's got experience, but yeah.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, you talked about heart and emotion sort of lacking from that. That's a nice segue into my next one then, because I saw completely the opposite of that. I went to see Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron. Where do you sort of sit on Studio Ghibli?
Two things: massive fan and massive envy that you've seen The Boy and the Heron. I've unfortunately been MIA. I've been on holiday, so I've come back to find out that Carl, the absolute swine, seen it before me. But yeah. Massive fan of the legacy. Huge fan of anime and the style in general. But yeah, so I'm a fan. There we go. Got there in the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, same here. And I mean, it's funny because I thought I was a fan. It's weird. I thought I was a fan because I'd seen Spirited Away, and then I kind of hadn't really seen any others. And then I met my wife. We've been on like a 10-year binge of just watching everything Ghibli. You know, so I've kind of probably watched about 20 now, but they're all in the last 10 years. So actually, it's all really fresh for me. You know, Ghibli's almost like a new discovery. You know, because I absolutely love Spirited Away. The Boy and the Heron. It's not as good as Spirited Away, but then few things are. But it is I would say, as close to a kind of close to it in tone, you know, as just in terms of imagination, in terms of the story, the sort of the journey the hero goes on. It's I won't sort of give much away, but it's just about a boy who moves out to the countryside. His dad is remarried after his mum dies in a fire right at the beginning. That's not a spoiler. It's literally like the first 10 seconds of the film is there's this big fire, and after this tragedy, he moves out to the countryside, and there's this mysterious heron, and it just sort of goes from there, and it feels like a victory lap. You know what I mean? It's like whereas I don't know if you've seen The Wind Rises, but everyone was saying, you know, that was his last one. That was the most personal film he'd ever made. It was his retirement film. You know, Miyazaki was bowing out with The Wind Rises, which was about like I think he was a father, wasn't it, or something, and kind of their involvement in the Japanese aerospace industry. This is almost like that was his personal retirement film, but this is his lap of honor. It's everything that's good about every Ghibli film you've ever seen. Okay. You know, it's like a greatest hits in terms of feels, in terms of tone, animation. There's so much stuff in it where I was going, oh, yeah, but not in a bad way, but I was going, oh, that's a little bit like Spirited Away. Oh, that's a little bit like Totoro. That was a little bit
like
very
defined style.
But it's just, it's because it's so cohesive and whole and so Miyazaki that it's like you can see the through line of all his films. And because of that, I just sat, just let it just wash over me for 2 hours. It's absolutely beautiful. Story just kind of grows and grows and gets weirder and more nuts, and I think what was nice was I sat there just going, I have no idea where this is going. A bit like the first time I saw Spirited Away, like I had no idea where that story was going, and because of that, it 100%. Like if you're a Ghibli fan, go and see it because you will get so much out of it, because it's like a sort of tip of the hat to everything he's achieved in his career. If you are not a Ghibli fan, then I'd say it'd be a pretty decent place to start, but I mean you wouldn't necessarily get those nods and kind of winks, but I think it's a solid enough story on its own that, you know, you get absolutely loads out of it. It's a wonderful film, and if it is his last one, he's in his 80s. It was just a wonderful way to bow out. So yeah, that's The Boy and the Heron. That's the end of my what you've been watching. Have you got anything else there, Jack?
Final one on the cards, and this is just because I watched it recently and it's been my goal. It doesn't matter who you are, it's my goal to make sure everyone sees this movie. Like, I don't care who you are, I don't care what your taste is. My goal in life is just to make everyone watch this movie. And that is The Greasy Strangler.
Just I have great title.
No idea why so many years have went by in my life without having seen it, because I think, one, it takes me a lot to watch a movie based on someone's recommendation, and I had it several times, keep getting told to watch this movie, and they sort of said it's in the same ballpark as Hobo with the Shotgun. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but I don't know, I sort of had it as a sort of B movie on purpose, sort of Machete, sort of slasher flick, I guess, and my God, it is so much more than that. Like, I think I watched it first, I was just like, oh, it's cheesy. There's a difference between good shit and bad shit, and I just thought, oh, it's like one of those good shit movies that you just laugh at. And then as it progressed, I was just like, my God, no, this is actually genius. They know exactly what they're doing, and that's everything from like this. I think the dialogue it comes across as bad, but when the further along you get, I'm like, no, this is been very well orchestrated, and everything in that movie. I love an alliteration. I love this as a description. If I had to describe it in 2 words, it's gorgeously grotesque. And I don't just mean the kills. I don't just mean the special effects. I don't just mean the ungodly amount of grease that's featured within the movie. Like everything, the set design, like everything just looks grotesque. Everything just looks ugly. Like the characters, they've went out of their way to dress them in horrendous attire that complements how horrendous they made the characters look in general. The score, like I say, it's to sum it up without spoiling, because like I say, I just think people should watch this movie. It follows this man and his son at the same time that these murders are happening in the vicinity, caused by this greasy strangler, an unknown assailant that's just covered from head to toe in grease. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say on it, because I don't want to spoil it. It's just I'm adamant that people need to see this movie ASAP.
You've absolutely sold me. I remember hearing good things about it when it came out, and yeah, again, I mean, it's one I haven't got around to, and I mean, I think I need to see this now. It's yeah, so it sounds interesting. So when you're saying it's it's more than just that kind of, you know, retro feel or whatever, do you mean in the way, I guess the way that, you know, that I suppose Tarantino and that were trying to elevate the kind of retro stuff they did, you know, and Planet Terror, it's kind of, so it's knowing how to use that to make a better film.
Yeah, so I think when people categorized it as it's like Hobo with a shotgun, it's completely wrong, because your mind immediately goes to that original sort of 35mm print or what have you. Your mind immediately goes there, make it look retro on purpose, and they don't even do that. But I know what they mean in terms of the vibe it's putting out. You'd think that, but there's not a cigarette burn in sight. So, but it's still got that retro B-movie vibe. Elijah Wood produced it, and anyone that knows anything of Elijah Wood's choices outside of Lord of the Rings, he's got such a versatile, like a lot like Daniel Radcliffe, such a versatile career in terms of variety, what he's done, but also the movies that he's into. If you've ever watched him on a panel, he loves talking about movies, and the guy's got like a really sort of like gruesome love for the absurd and the more horrific horrors and the more alternative horrors. He's starring in the remake of The Toxic Avenger. That's his vibe. So it makes sense that he would produce this kind of a movie. Like I say, it's not necessarily trying to be an 80s slasher. It's not trying to be 70s. It's not trying to be that. It's uniquely bizarre in its own right, and it's so original. Like, I get why people compare it to that, but it's just, it deserves so much more, which is why I'm adamant for people to watch it, because it deserves more than being lumped in with those other movies.
Yeah, great. I think that's really interesting, because I mean, I think, yeah, there has been a bit of a, you know, I guess Hobo with Shotgun was one of the first ones, but there's been a lot of those kind of retro, you know, grindhousey sort of style that were kind of copying that sort of grindhouse feel. But I think the majority of them that I've seen, that's it. That's all they've got. You know, it's like they're not actually great films or anything. It's just they go, oh, let's make something that looks really violent and retro, but then it's pretty shallow, you know. But this sounds like it's got a lot more going on. Brilliant. I will definitely check that out. Yeah. Well, that's what we've been watching. So I think let's move on to the next link in the chain. We'll just go to ads, and we'll see you when we get back. Welcome back. So we're now moving into our featured review for the week. So this is link number 2 on our chain as we get this idea up and running. And as Jack mentioned at the beginning, my choice this week was Alien 3, starring Brian Glover. Alien 3. So Alien 3 was the feature debut of the now very much celebrated director David Fincher. Notoriously troubled production at the time, and sees the return of Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley, facing off again against a slightly sort of different breed of alien threat that she'd fought against in Alien and Alien. Aliens. So this is the third film in that trilogy, kind of the third of the 4 original Alien films, as it were. And the Alien universe, now that, I don't know about you, Jack, but the Alien universe to me is certainly an important one, I would say, to me. I think the films themselves over the years, I mean, especially if we're going into the kind of modern ones with Covenant and Prometheus, have been variable in quality, I think it's fair to say. But I think 99% of film fans would agree the first 2 are undeniable classics. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It's hard to describe before we get into the nitty gritty of the third one. So for me, the reason the first one worked so well is its genre. It was like, after sci-fi, the first one was undeniably a haunted house movie in space. It was a horror movie in space, and it owned it, and it did it very well. The second one was a sci-fi movie. It couldn't, but it went a different way, and it was an action movie. I think so. The first one was a horror movie, and the second one, James Cameron, was an action movie, and they both owned those genres within the legacy. For the third one to be a horror or to be an action movie, it would fall short because the first 2 did it so well. So I think the third one definitely made it made the movie its own. But it's just, what was it? I don't know. Was it a drama? It's harder. Anyway, yeah, that's my opinion on the first 2.
I mean, looking back, I think it's probably, for me, it was one of the it probably must have been one of the toughest sequels to even try and comprehend. I actually saw this in the cinema. It was the first 18 I ever sneaked into, which was brilliant. I was 16. Me and all my mates, there was about 6 or 7 of us, went to sneak in. And the funny thing was, I remember this night brilliantly because one of us got ID'd and turned away. But they didn't, for some reason, think that maybe the rest of us were the same age as this guy. So we, in true, Musketeers spirit, all for one and one for all, we went in and watched the film, and he buggered off home. So, which we felt bad about, but not that bad. Because I had been dying to see Alien 3, because when I was about 10, I saw Aliens, and I'm not joking when I say there are a few films that literally changed my life. Like, Aliens changed my life. Like, as a film fan, Aliens rocked my world like no movie I'd ever seen. I mean, it's still to this day second only to Shawshank Redemption as my favourite film of all time. It's the film I've seen most. I've probably seen it 70, 80 times. I used to know it absolutely word inside out backwards. So 6 years of being 10 to 16 waiting for Aliens 3 to come out, I couldn't have been anything but disappointed in a weird way. It's not that I was disappointed with the film. I think it's a good film, or I certainly thought it was then. It was a good film, but it just had the toughest sequel job in history. I think following 2 of the all-time great films. But I think, it had a troubled production, yada yada. I think more recently there has been a bit of a kind of reassessment of Alien 3. And I've got to be honest, when I was researching this before I rewatched it, having not seen it in probably 10, 12 years, I started watching a few YouTube videos of stuff other people and what their thoughts were. And there has been this kind of almost like rose-tinted reassessment that it's some kind of forgotten masterpiece, actually the best of the bunch. Like,
it's not.
It's a true piece of genius. And I'm sorry to say, it's not. Yes, it's David Fincher, but we don't need to, celebrate everything David Fincher has ever done as if it's the greatest piece of cinema that's ever lived. Yeah, I cannot help but feel it's just Fincher fanboys. Sorry if you're out there and that's, I've offended you now. But I love David Fincher. I think he's a great director. But this is not a classic, that's my sort of thoughts on it. Jack, what are yours?
I basically like the route that it goes, because where could you have went from the first 2? So it makes it its own. I'm not going to say it's unapologetically its own, because I feel like a lot of apologies have been made for the movie since, even from Fincher. So it's definitely not.
Doesn't even talk about it, doesn't he?
He's completely wiped it from his catalogue. But I think rewatching it, I feel like it deserved a lot more credit when it came out. It's the problem with it is Aliens went harder than the first one, but that's only because like you had more basically, and it's like where do you go from there? More aliens? I don't think no. And that was the point I made earlier. The first one was a horror and it nailed that genre. The second one was very much an action movie and it nailed that. The third one, like I say, if I had to get, I'd love to say it's a drama, like depending on which version that you've watched. And I should say this as well when we'll get into talking about it. I watched the director's cut, it's the only version that they say is the director's cut. I think it's categorized as the special edition on my Alien Quadrilogy box set. It's the closest to the version that David wanted, and you watched the theatrical cut. Is that right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I thought I owned the director's cut, but I didn't, and it's not available in the UK. It's just not available anywhere basically, unless you buy a Blu-ray. I watched the theatrical cut, which was interesting because the last 2 or 3 times I've watched it has been the director's cut. So it's kind of going back to the source, and there's definitely some stuff. We'll get into it later, but I think there's definitely some stuff you miss when you have seen the director's cut. Like the theatrical cut suffers even more having seen it.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, like I say, it's been a while since I've because every now and again I will go on an alien binge, an alien saga. But it's been so long since I've watched the third one. I thought there was certain scenes in the director's cut that I actually quite liked, and then I rewatched it. Sorry, I keep saying the director's cut. It's the special edition because I know there's tons of fanboys out there that say there is no director's cut.
The assembly cut, I think, is the technical.
Yeah. It's the special edition cut, which is apparently the closest to that you'll ever get of David Fincher's vision. But there's certain scenes that I watched in the special edition. I was just like, I thought this happened. I thought that happened. And I realized that I enjoyed certain things that are missing, which are in yours. So after we've had this chat, I might rewatch the theatrical.
I actually read the novelization when it came out. At the same time, I went to see it at the cinema, and there was like a big plot line that was in the book that just wasn't in the film. And I was really surprised when I saw it at the cinema, because I was like, oh, what happened there? And then you watch the director's cut and it's in there, or the assembly edit, it was in there. And I think it definitely feels like the 90s was a very bad time for studio interference. I think people say that about stuff now, and I think you can feel it a bit now with Marvel and DC and all that sort of stuff. But the 90s was a particularly terrible time for people interfering with directors' work, and this was definitely a prime example of that, I think. And I know there were other great directors that came out in the 90s that had the same thing with their debut films, where the studio just took over. I think. Do you think it feels like a David Fincher film?
The grittiness, the filter, the color grade, the abysmal world, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's certain aspects like I don't know, the shot of County Durham beach, the grey scale like across everything, the gritty inmates, and there's certain things I'm like, oh yeah, but as a whole I don't think it's his movie, and I think that's why he sort of fucked it off.
Yeah,
it's like got nothing to, you know what I mean?
There's definitely sort of stylistic flourishes that I think were in there, like when you get the POV from the alien and all that sort of stuff. I feel that, and the camera's whooshing around, I feel that's very sort of Fincher. But I think it's really the look, it's the look and feel of it. I think that kind of look, that Seven, really, if people sort of think of Seven as his first film, if you forget Alien 3, I don't think it's actually a massive leap from Alien 3 to Seven. It's like it's got, like you say, that dark, gritty, really nasty kind of look that he sort of just absolutely nailed with Seven, and it went on to really influence like the next 10 years of thrillers. Everything looked like Seven after that. So I definitely feel that there was you can't say it's a film that he couldn't put his style on. I think the problems with it feels to me, came more from the sort of story and the editing side of it, rather than his stylistic touches, because it's got some good stuff. I feel it's held up pretty well, actually. I think I would say it's a good film. It's just not a great film like the first two. But it's not a terrible travesty like some people make out, and the press at the time when it came out really went to town savaging it. But it's also not this lost masterpiece, flawless, best Alien film that YouTube seems to be saying.
No, I completely agree. I mean, if you don't mind, I want to start with the negatives. I feel like I've already touched on some of the negatives. But I'm gonna start with the main negatives, and then I'll sort of mention the strengths, because there are strengths within this movie. But for me, I think the problem that it had, and especially when it came out, I feel like although the second one was different in terms of subgenre, like I say, it was more of an action movie than a horror, it still kept the same tone and yet made it its own. So it kept with the legacy. And by the time the second one came out, like there were certain things that people just expected from the franchise that had it earned that place. But after rewatching this, and I've called this the three main fuck yous to the legacy, and
Nice.
That's what I think this movie accomplished. So it more or less happens straight away. The opening of the movie, you get a shot of the face hugger like around the ship, and then immediately, oh shit, like they didn't get away at the end. But after that, so Hicks and Newt from the second one don't make it. But it's the way it's revealed that they don't make it. Now, if you watch these movies like one after the other, you've just come off a massive roller coaster and so much shit that these characters have went through to survive. And it's like, oh yeah, they made it. And then the third one, the first, fuck you, is, yeah, Hicks and Newt didn't make it. Not only that, but we're going to just mention that flippantly. Like, they don't go in a great, like, it's not a massive emotional moment. You've got your man, Charles Dance, that just says to Ripley, she's like, she comes to, and it's like, where are the others? Like, because she just expects it. She's like, and where are the others? He's like, oh no, they didn't make it. She's like, what? And it's like, they didn't make it. Let's move on. It's not given the characters the credit they deserve, because they went through so much in the first one. Then it's like, yeah, they're dead. Let's move on. I don't know what you think of that one.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, Aliens is a super important film to me, and a big part of that was because I loved the characters in that film, and I really loved both the dynamic with Hicks and Ripley. You don't need a romance, and it wasn't a romance. It's like a sort of respect. Yeah. It could have grown into a romance, but it was lovely, that relationship, and just the way the good chemistry I thought that they had. You have the kind of story of Ripley losing her daughter, and then director's cut, but that she's lost her daughter, and so basically the fact that she sort of finds this new one, and there's the kind of mother protection sort of arc she goes through, fighting off against this other mother trying to protect her children, and that's everything that Cameron was going for. And the thing is, I've seen Aliens being criticised for that now. It's almost like this kind of revisionist, super, like, I don't know. It's like, the thing is, it's not like feminist in the sense it's like a bunch of angry feminists. Like, it's actually like guys doing this kind of feminist sort of revision of Aliens, saying, oh, it's really, really reductive, and it's making her into this like mother stereotype that's somehow negative. And I'm like, I had no problem with that, and I still don't have a problem with that. And I think actually I loved Aliens for that, So to go straight into immediately wiping that out, was basically, I feel, a massive fuck you to the fans. And like anybody that loved Aliens, and we're talking 6-7 years after Aliens came out, you suddenly sit down to watch this and they just go, oh no, they're dead. And they're literally within seconds. It doesn't even hang around. I mean, they're dead within the first 30 seconds of the film, And I've always had a big problem with that. It gets it off on the wrong foot for me right away. And I think that some people possibly just couldn't look past it. I am able to kind of then appreciate, I think, the film for its positives as well. But it's hard to get past it as a decision.
I mean, especially like I say, it is flippantly mentioned, but then it's like, wait, they're dead? And it's like, oh, you want more? Okay, we're going to show you this autopsy of the child. Like, just to sort of, let's double down on, like, she's dead.
Yeah, it really hammers in the kind of, okay, she's upset that but she's also straight into warrior mode, and but I think yeah, it's almost like it takes it a bit too far, I think, with that.
Well, that, not to disagree, but I think that's one of the things that I didn't necessarily like about the movie, like, oh, getting a child autopsy. But I think that it's like, yeah, this is a movie that's saying we're going to make this our own. And like I say, that's the grittiness coming across. And it's like, yeah, like, it is a fuck you, but like on the other side of the same coin, it's sort of like, but this is the movie we're making. We're not making the last movie. So, like I say, that was my first one anyway. The second one, and you touched on it before, was how Ripley is this like really strong character. So, like I say, in the first one, even I think when the script was first written, it was written as Ripley, and Ripley was originally intended for a man, and then it was given to Sigourney Weaver, who played it tremendously. But because of that, she was always seen as an equal. The fact that she was a woman was never played a part in it, and nor should it. And then you had the second one where it's like, I never saw her as necessarily as a strong mother. I just saw her as a strong character, and that came across in the second one as well. Now, the third one, it doesn't just make a point, like, from the word go, it is mentioned she is a woman. All the inmates reference that she is a woman. They're uncomfortable with a woman being there. They hammer down so hard on the fact that she's a woman. And like I say, because she was always seen as an equal to me and a strong woman, I think that the moment that becomes shattered entirely, the second fuck you of the movie is the fact that they shatter that whole aspect of the character. And that happens when the inmates who, like, you've got a bunch of murderers, rapists, child molesters, all these horrendous people, and they take away the strong feelings of that character, make her a victim, and proceed to almost rape Ripley. Now, that's the second fuck you for me, because like I say, she's such a strong character, and it's like, no, we're making her a victim. And we're not just making her a victim, we're making her a weak woman as well that can't defend herself. Once again, on the reverse side of the same coin, it leads into my favorite line of the movie, which is when the preacher comes out and it's like,
I gotta re-educate some of the brothers.
Yeah,
like, for
yeah,
me,
that's so...
favorite line of the movie, but it wasn't worth taking away what that character meant to so many people in that one moment.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Actually, I mean that's a very, very good point, and I think it's because the only thing about that scene is she is the victim to basically prove that Dylan is a badass and like the leader of the prisoners and kind of a man of his faith. You know, it's like he's a violent man, he's a criminal, he's a rapist. You know, he says it all to her, but at the same time, the only point of that scene, they've all been saying, oh, you can't wander around alone, and then she wanders around alone, and then the one thing they've warned her about nearly happens. I can't help but feel the only point that scene serves is for him to save her, and it's like she's never needed a man to save her. She's always been the one that kicks ass and kind of takes charge and is decisive. You know, it's that I absolutely agree with that point. I think that is quite reductive. It's funny that people are saying Aliens is reductive, but actually I think that scene is more reductive than anything in Aliens. You know, if you're looking at it from the perspective of kind of male-female stereotypes, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I say, I'd never noticed it to try and pinpoint what was necessarily wrong with the movie, and I think, like I say, the main one is the fact that, well, you've taken away everything that made this character. So it's the sort of get away from her, you bitch. Is like, no, she's not this badass anymore. She can easily be overpowered, and she doesn't even sort of get a lick in until the preacher's already beat them up, and it's like, that's not who she was for me. And like you said about Hicks as well, they developed this relationship, but it was sort of like it could have been a romantic relationship, but I like how they left it to the viewer, especially with the credits. It's like, kind of like to think that they might have ended up together, but she's never been that way inclined, especially given the circumstance. And then this one's just like, yeah, she's just going to shag Charles Dance. Yeah, that's like, it's not as earned. It doesn't feel earned.
Yeah.
Like everything she went through with the other characters in the other movies, it's like, well, like I say, she definitely earned it with Hicks, but it never happened. And it's like within a day of meeting Charles Dance.
Funnily enough, it's almost like similar to what we were saying about American Werewolf. You know, Jenny Agutter sort of being very sort of pro-sex, sort of forward. You know, she takes charge. You know, it's very it's kind of similar to what happens with Charles Dance. You know, she's just very forward, but like you say, that wasn't her character kind of in the previous films, and I think that's fine. That's absolutely fine, because like maybe she just, it was that moment. But I feel of all the characters, Hicks is the one that gets the worst service from this film, because like you get to see her more nuked, you get to see her really upset, but it's almost like she doesn't care at all that Hicks is, you know, it's just like she just kind of goes, oh. It's like, you know, I felt that there was a little bit more, like she should be a little bit more upset, and I think
there was no emotion.
And again, in this kind of, it feels to me like it comes out of nowhere. It's not earned. I think it's not the action that bothers me. It's the writing. It's just so sudden and so out of character. It's not in the characters. It's just like, oh well, she never jumped on Hicks in Aliens. You know? Yeah,
they retconned the character, so for that reason, it's like, oh, like I've got no problem with the character doing that, but that's not this character's mentality. That's not how this character operates. That's the thing that's bizarre. But yeah, for me, that was the second and probably my main, the main fuck you. But brings me on to the third one, spoilers, which is the best thing about the first two movies, and it sort of like ties into the kind of character Ripley is she was always the survivor. If not the last, then always the survivor. She always survived. She was always the biggest bad. She always survived. And then this movie's like, so we've taken away the emotional attachments that everyone loved about the second one. We've taken away the strong woman characteristics of the first two movies. Now we're just going to take away your favorite character, and that's obviously, you know, she gets infected by the alien. Spoiler: the facehugger like laid an egg in her, not Newt. And the ending of the movie is the end of the movie, and I don't know whether or not he was just trying to sort of say, right, that's it, we're not making any more after this. But that for me was the biggest sort of like, we're cutting, like this movie's done after this. We're getting rid of Ripley, and that for me was the third and final.
I sort of agree, sort of disagree on that one. I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about that ending later, but I think it wasn't the ending any of us see. I mean, I think that the problem is it's canon now, right? I mean, it's like that's the story. That's the story we got. And I know I got really excited for a while because there was that talk that Neil Blomkamp was going to do an Alien sequel. It was going to forget Alien 3, and you could kind of go down that route. But actually thinking about it, you know, if they had, it might have been great, might have been brilliant, might have been the exact movie we wanted to see. But you'd still always know that Alien 3 was out there, and you'd feel a little bit like you sort of, you know, cheated. I think it's like if her arc was to survive the Nostromo, survive LV-426, and then die on a prison planet, you know, it's not the arc I wanted, but I think it's the arc they gave her. And I think it's, once I sort of accepted that, I was like, okay, I think for me it comes down to, does the death have meaning? You know, does it mean something that she has died? And I'm a bit torn on it, because I feel it kind of works in the moment for the story they told, but actually if you take it on its fundamental, that she's impregnated with an alien queen and she's like, well, if I don't kill myself, this thing will get loose and destroy humanity. She has no idea that that's the only alien, like, at all. There could be hundreds of them. So it's like her death is sort of means something in terms of that movie, but in the grand scheme of things means absolutely nothing.
I think I definitely agree with you there in that, like, it's sort of like short-sighted. Well, there probably is more. You've been on a planet full of the eggs, like, you know, for a fact there's more. I guess it sort of brings back the character of Ripley we know and love, that, like, it's a testament to the type of person that she is, that she would rather die. Like, she doesn't care about our own well-being. She's always just cared about others. So she's like, I'll happily sacrifice myself. And
I think that's really important. I think it's super important that the last decision is hers, you know, and actually that does go back. I see what you're saying about kind of taking away the strong female character, but I think actually ultimately the character of Ripley does really come back right at that end scene, because she chooses to shut that gate. The way she does it, it's attitude. That is pure Ripley. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, when you look at the rest of the movie, she's a bit more passive, isn't she? Like, even with the final end scene where they're trying to trap the alien, it's the prisoners trying to trap it. She does very little. Yeah. She's just bait. Actually, I've only just literally thought about it, but it's like she almost actually doesn't do very much until the very end. No. She's just there. So to do this kind of take that it's some sort of super empowerment movie, I find that a weird take that people have got, because actually, no, I'm coming around to your argument. I think actually it does her a massive disservice when you think of it in those terms. I've really thought of it like that before, but actually, you know, she is so on the sidelines for so much of this film that ultimately the only thing she does that is her choice is right at the very end.
And Charles Dance.
Charles Dance, yeah. Which, you know, I guess, you know, some would say that's a win, I guess.
Charles Dance, yeah.
I would add a fourth one. I don't know if it's quite the fuck you, but I think my biggest problem I have with this was something my wife pointed out. She'd never seen it before when we watched it last night, and it was the Charles Dance character, actually. Like, the fact that he is really interesting character, and she basically said that the moment he died, she lost interest, because she was just like, I don't know the rest of these people. They're all pretty horrendous people. But it's like, it is a hard film to like, because it's asking you to like do all the things you don't normally do. Normally, you know, okay, you got your Hollywood stereotypes, but you know, you have your hero, your heroine, all the rest of it. But it's like, this is asking you to go, oh, here's a character, they've bonded physically.
Yeah.
You know, he's got an interesting backstory. He's not the killer they are. You know, he's killed, but it was accidental. It was, you know, malpractice, whatever. But it's like, to wipe him out the way that they do, and then immediately there's the shock death of the governor as well. You know, it's like that's almost back to back, like, surprise. You know, it's
I completely agree.
Twist death, but I think actually the film loses something when he goes. Because I agree actually with my wife. Like, I think after he's gone, there's almost like nothing to really hang on to other than the actual survival story.
That's one of the points I was going to make. It's one of the main strengths. Like I say, I've got 3 strengths to run through, but I'll touch on one of them now. Just it's a good segue, is what you've said in regards to Charles Dance's character. I mean, he, like, aside from Ripley, he is the only other character that I cared about in that movie. And a lot of it is credited to that brilliant scene where he's talking about why he's there. Because it's like, and he talks about, like, obviously how he prescribed the wrong medication because he used to be a drunk or whatever, or an addict. And I thought that was a brilliant scene. It was one of the best scenes of the movie. And like I say, immediately after, to get rid of it, it's like his character picking to do it. And so once again, it's a trait of this movie, flippantly getting rid of main characters. You could argue that another character that you care about is Ripley, but I would say I care about Ripley based on the credit that was earned in the first 2 movies. If I was just basing it on this movie, I do not care about this Ripley at all. But other than that, Charles Dance, like, absolutely. So yeah, I agree with that. Being the 4th, not to the legacy, but certainly a fuck you from the movie, from this particular one. So yeah, the strengths, like I say, I've got 2 more to touch on. So one of the things I did like, and I think this is a lot of this is one of the main things that people are critical about, in that the movie, the second one went bigger than the first one. It had more aliens, exactly as the name does, exactly what it says on the tin. But one of the things I liked is how it sort of reverted back to the structure of the first one, in that there is only one alien, but they do it in a way that it's like, but it's not like the first one. She's stranded on this planet prison with no weapons to speak of. So because of that, I think you get this more innovative, like, sort of creative way of capturing the alien. So I think that was one of the strengths of the movie, in that they did revert back to the structure of the first one, but they sort of made it their own by saying, but the stakes aren't the same. They've got no weapons to speak of, sort of thing. Don't know what you thought of that.
It's difficult because, I mean, the thing is, for me, I love Aliens so much more. I love Alien, but like, I love Aliens so much more that I can't deny the military sci-fi stuff is like, just floats my boat. You know, I think that's absolutely my jam. I mean, I love that sort of thing, and I don't think there's ever been a better take on it than than that. And James Cameron is a master of that stuff. I love the Avatar films because of that as well. You know, the military sci-fi stuff, military and space stuff is really good. And I think I found it a little difficult then. I sort of still do now. I mean, I do like it. I think I'd like it more if I cared more about the people that are there. I think the problem Alien 3 has is there's very few of the characters you really get to know. So it just becomes a bunch of meat sacks running around. You know, it's like they all, and I think it even more so than like, some people could say, oh, aliens are all the Marines. You know, there's a few that stand out, but the rest are just skin jobs or whatever. But I think the fact is the decision to shave everyone's heads kind of, on one hand, gives it an amazing look, but it also kind of depersonalizes everybody. Like everybody just becomes this kind of almost like gender neutral, you know.
Because of the lice on the planet. They need to shave their heads.
But which is a great. I think aesthetically, it's a brilliant choice, and like I say, it kind of degenders everybody. You know, even though she is a woman walking around, as soon as she shaves her head, it's almost like gender neutral. You know, the whole film, and I think that's a really interesting choice. But I think from a perspective of having 20 odd people being killed by an alien monster. It becomes very difficult to know who's who and who's getting killed and who isn't, and I think because of that, none of the deaths really hit me. It's got a huge body count, the third film.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
but it's quite it's almost like they just happen. You know, it's like, oh, he's dead. Oh, and that one's dead now. And they're very violent. It's very quick. It's by far, I think, the most violent Alien film. Like, you know,
I know for sure. I mean, on that note, would you have preferred? Because I know we've said like the characters are just like meat sacks, and I completely agree. In terms of, because like I say, one of my main strengths was the just being back to one alien. Do you think there should have been more xenomorphs?
Yeah, I think, weirdly, I suppose I'm not really like responding to that strength, am I? Because, no, I think it's a problem I've got with it is because like it's hard to sort of care about anyone. I think it works because you've got one alien killing all those people. Yeah. I mean, if you had 2 or 3 aliens killing a bunch of bald, shaved head people, it wouldn't make it any better. You know, I think once they zeroed onto that, what works for me is it's not just trying to recreate the first one, it's the fact that they go for the really interesting religion angle. And this came out of the production, didn't it? The production design, you can see all the stuff online, Vincent Ward's kind of original script and all that sort of stuff where it was going to be kind of a wooden monk planet in space. And, that was all a bit out there. In a way, I'd still love to have seen that version of it, I think, because just a kind of genuine floating wooden monastery in space, with an alien on board. I kind of think that would be so unique. It doesn't feel unique enough to kind of escape the shadow of Alien. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I think it's fine that they went back to one. I get it. It's not what I wanted. It's probably still not what I wanted, but it works. Yeah. Once you go, okay, you're trapped. And you've got an alien and it's out there and it's really aggressive, this one. I think, it's a great setup. It just becomes a bigger body count, but without, I think what lets it down is it doesn't have the tension. It doesn't have the tension of the first one. It's like, for me, I know you say about haunted house in space. I would say Alien is half haunted house in space, half slasher movie in space, but it's like a good slasher movie, like a really well done one, like Halloween or something in space. Whereas the third one is more like, one of the later Friday the 13th or Halloween's. It's a massive body count. Everybody's just getting butchered, but you don't really you don't get the feels. It doesn't land the way Alien did. But because you love the characters in Alien, you get to know them. And I don't know these rapey murderers people.
No, for sure.
Like, they're just apart from a couple of standouts. There are 2 or 3 where you go, okay, I sort of get their character a bit more, but I don't feel there was enough character work. What do you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, I like what you say about like the haunted house, like the sort of slasher, the first one, and I get like I'm just thinking about it now, like the third one tried to recreate what the first one did with there just being one alien, but I also think that if the original one came out in the late 70s, I want to say, I'm going to feel bad if it didn't, but so I think that one was to sort of 70s horror what the third one is to 90s horror, you didn't really get a lot of scary. And what I mean by that is you didn't get a lot of scary horrors in the 90s.
No.
But you got some gory ones. And I think this movie is, like I say, is to 90s horror what the original one was to 70s horror, in that it just makes up for the lack of tension, the lack of scares with gore. This is the goriest one by far.
It's interesting, isn't it, that actually Fincher went on to make one of the creepiest like films ever with Seven, you know, where, I mean, that's got some genuinely horrific, gets under your skin stuff by showing very little, where he kind of went show a lot in Alien 3, and actually it's not scary at all. It's quite interesting. I wonder again if that was a studio thing or whether that was his decision. Like, did he want to have a bit more stalk and skulk and kind of slow kill, or was it just the studio saying no, you've just got to make it full of bodies, you know? I think a lot of the deaths are very similar as well, you know. It's people being hauled up into vents and hauled up into the roof and jumped on, and you see them
a lot of blood
flailing, but there's very little to make it stand out. Like every death in Alien felt different, felt impactful, felt like you know you were seeing something different every time, and I just feel that Alien 3 doesn't quite manage that. So yeah, I mean, I think it is. I wouldn't say it's a strength for me that it does that story. I think it's fine that it does. You know, it's like you either got one alien, you got loads of aliens. You've either got loads of guns, you got no guns. There's very few, I suppose, variations on this theme. But for a kind of one alien on a planet, it was a good setup. You know, it's a good setup.
I completely agree with the points that you've made, which I guess will bring me on to my third and final strength. It's a small one, but for me, it's. And I'd be curious to see what the argument for something else would be. But for me, it's arguably not. It's arguably one of the weakest movies in the franchise, and it receives a lot of criticism. But one of the things I think is that one of the best things in all of the movies. This movie does one particular, and it's that my favorite shot in the entire franchise, so I'm counting all of them, my favorite shot, still, whatever you want to call it, is the xenomorph alongside Ripley. It's just cowering, and it's alongside her face, and it just breathes, and then it realizes. But that shot, I think, is infamous. You think about Alien, you think of that shot of Ripley to the side going, "Ooh," and the xenomorph right there. For me, that is the main strength, and it's such a little thing, but I think it is the best shot in the entire franchise. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. That's definitely like Alien at its best, isn't it? I think those sort of visuals, it's those little moments where you go, oh god, yeah, that thing's terrifying, and I think Sigourney Weaver just absolutely sells that moment. You know, she looks utterly terrified. It's like it's the first time where she feels like it's over, I think. You know what I mean? It's like, if you think back to her, what she's been through in the other films, she's always almost been one step ahead. She's kind of outwitted it. She's been scared, but she's never kind of had literally death is in her face, you know. And I think that it is a really good moment. I completely agree. Yeah. I think that's there's some great visuals in it. There's some moments that I think really, really work. I think she looks amazing. Like the cinematography of Sigourney Weaver with that shaved head.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it was such an amazing choice because she's really just such a striking screen presence, and I think all those close-ups of her just look incredible. I think overall, actually, let's talk about the production design actually, because I think that is the film's absolute strongest point. It's worth watching just to enjoy the visuals, because I don't think it's an ugly film. I think some people say it's an ugly film. It's very brown. I get it. It's very, very metallic, very kind of dark, but I love that. I think the griminess and the grittiness it's perfect in that world.
Very industrial.
You know, it's perfect in that world, isn't it? Because like when you go back to Alien, you know, the thing about Nostromo, the thing about LV-426, it feels real. They feel lived in. They feel, you know, people talk about Star Wars as being a universe that feels lived in with everything a bit battered. I mean, this feels like reality. Like everything is banged together metal, you know, and riveted, and doesn't look sleek in any way. And I think Alien 3 doubles down on that.
The opening shot, which establishes the world of the third one for any movie buffs out there, it's a beach in County Durham, quite close to where I live. You see the rain and the planet and stuff like that. I wouldn't even be surprised if they didn't add any special effects. That's just a normal day in the life of here in the Northeast. But because of that,
that is the North Sea.
It's during one of our hotter summers. But yeah, for that reason, it does give that griminess in the set and everything like that, and that's and dare I add a fourth strength, but yeah, because of that, it establishes the world well. I love the industrial vibe of it all, and it ties in nicely to the religious aspect. I don't know. It feels like a massive metal church to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you could ever get a space gothic movie, I would say it falls within that, doesn't it? It's got a gothic sort of vibe. The steel factory and the way that when they do that burial scene, well, not burial, putting the bodies into the vat, and then you get Dylan's character walking in, and he does that little bit of sermonizing stuff. I mean, it feels, it's cathedral-esque, it's expansive, it's a huge open space, but it's got just an amazing sort of gothic sort of look to it. It's great sets. They really put some effort for a film that was apparently troubled all the way through. I really feel they put a huge effort into the production design on it. I think that ending suffers a little bit for me because it not only are you confused by who's who because of all the bald heads and running around, but I don't think, and I feel this may be something that's in the director's cut, but in the theatrical cut, they don't explain what the plan is that well. They sort of say about the piston, but you don't really understand why they're running around shutting all the doors, and I sort of feel like maybe in the other edit that is better explained.
The version that I watched, it's quite clear the point of this room, that once the doors are closed, no one's getting in or out of there. Like, that's it. Once those doors are closed, so we need to get the xenomorph into this room, basically. So that's the plan. So they come up with a plan to sort of shut all the doors, like, systematically.
I think as a set piece, it works really well, and I think it's a great kind of heroic death for Dylan when he sacrificed himself.
I was kind of confused about who his character was by that point, because obviously when he opens like, "You don't want to know me, lady. I'm like a murderer and a rapist of women," or what have you, and then he basically detests her, and then you've got this moment at the end where he's like, no, you live, like you don't die before that thing, and it's like, right, and then you're like, "I know, okay," and then he's like, "But I'm okay to die first. I'm going to sacrifice myself," and it's like, why? Like, by that point I was just like, I'm confused about what your motivation is by this point. And that might be like where the studio interference comes across most, is in that finale, because it seems like an amalgamation of, like, a compilation of just shit they've saw in different movies that they really like, and we're like, well, that needs to be, like, we need a heroic sacrifice, let's put that in. And then I don't know why, and I don't know what you think about this, but that finale for me, it had Terminator 2 written all over it. Like, the hot lead, them like over, like lowering it down, like there's even the chains and stuff, and them like screaming, going, yeah, like, well, it's like, we need that ending in ours. We need a villain to sort of fall in a vat of something. It's just like, it's already been done.
Yeah, I mean, actually, if talking about character motivations changing and stuff as well, I mean, I think, you've got that ending, they go for that sort of dark ending, but you've also got that character of, what's he called, 86 or whatever is his IQ.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's another one, isn't he, where his whole motivation all the way through is to see his family, and he's going to help them. Yeah. And all of a sudden she goes like, oh, I'm going to throw myself into the vat. And he picks up a wrench and gets shot. And you just go... Why did he do that? Like that came out of nowhere. I think there's no reason why that character would have hit Lance Henriksen, and it's like you're saying, it's like they just decided they had to give it that big kind of that ending. It's almost like her jumping into the vat. I suppose you could argue it's the lowering the Terminator into the
right. I mean, what you've just said about 86, like, it's that entire third act just feels like a shoehorn of certain things. And what you said about Lance, like, first off, I think his cameo, like, was forced. It's like, oh, I'm not the robot, I'm human. Like, I guess the image of Bishop was based on me, like, muddy. It's like, right, feel like you're just there as a friendly face, which is bizarre because we had the actual Bishop half of earlier.
Yeah, I just feel it is actually a bit muddled. I think I sort of I get swept up in it a little bit. It's only when you step back a little bit. And I think this is why Alien 3 has never worked for me fully, because the moment you take a step back, it's like this chat. We're kind of going, it's good, but it's always like, it's good, but there's a but after everything, isn't there? I just want to talk about the religion aspect, because I was thinking about it, and this is, I don't know if I'm now elevating it, but actually I was thinking there was something quite interesting, and I don't know, I'm going to claim this theory as my own, because I don't think I've heard this on any other podcast. It's quite interesting if you look at it from the angle of, it's almost like a reverse Messiah. She is like the Mary, to the kind of new, alien that's going to be born. And when the guy is saying earlier in the film there's a devil, it's like it's a devil, it suddenly made me go, well, there's quite a religious through line through this, and you've got all the iconography obviously there. They're in this cathedral-esque place, they've taken religion to their heart, they're bad people but they're kind of trying to live good, and then she obviously comes into the mix, but they throw in the storyline of her being pregnant, and I thought about it and I was like, well, firstly, she's been impregnated, unbeknown to her. So, almost immaculate conception,
Yeah.
She's almost like, going to be the mother of the devil, not the mother of, the Messiah. Does that make sense? Am I just talking absolute
No,
wank?
absolutely. There's a massive religious theme. There's a massive religious theme running through this whole movie. Like you say, the story and like the whole reverse Messiah. Love that. The fact that she's got this immaculate conception, the cathedral-esque, the gothicness, and the score as well. Like I say, the score sounds like it complements the tone brilliantly. It sounds like it belongs in a church for one.
She dies to save humanity by killing her child, as opposed to giving birth to the child that will save humanity. It's a nice twist, and I'd like to think that was intentional on the writer's part, but the rest of it is just such a mess. I don't know if I'm adding depth where there isn't any.
I think it would be a ridiculous coincidence, like maybe if you'd like nitpicked certain things and stretched to make them work, but I think there's that religious aspect running throughout the movie. So final thoughts, like I say, I've mentioned my favourite lines thus far. You've got to re-educate some of the brothers, and then no more cigarettes for you, but I've got one more favourite line, and it was a moment that I just thought was hilarious, because it's when he's scanning Sigourney Weaver when the first I need to see, and he's like, oh God, you've got one of them in you. Like, it's not exactly what he says, but he says, oh, you've got one of them inside you. And then she just, it's a stupid question with a more hilarious answer. She's like, what's it look like? And he goes, horrible. Horrible. It's like, well, what kind of answer did you want, really? That was another one of my favorite lines. Horrible.
Yeah, what does it look like? Yeah, I think it's not a film rippling with one-liners, is it? I mean, it didn't need it. I mean, I think that's another thing though, because there's so many quotable lines in Aliens, so it's just every line is almost quotable, and I think Alien 3 is kind of like the script it's a bit muddier. There's not as many good ones. There's some good moments though. I think I particularly like the bit after the governor's been pulled up into the vent, where you see the guy and he's sloshing underneath. He's like cleaning underneath the vent, and he's literally sort of doing it at arm's length. I thought that's like the only funny moment in the whole film. It just seems totally out of place, but it did give me a chuckle. But yeah. Well, there we go. I think that's our thoughts on Alien 3. I mean, for me, I'd still say it's the third best Alien film.
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah, absolutely. Because it kind of just got worse after there. So as everyone's reservations about the third one, just think, what came after.
Okay, I mean, you said earlier about would more aliens have helped. I mean, they obviously then went back to more aliens for Resurrection. And I mean, Resurrection, again, is a deeply flawed film. I think it's actually fun in a lot of places, but the last third, it just collapses on itself. It just, it's a dreadful, dreadful work.
I think that it's something to be taken from that is you need to stop chasing these winning recipes. They keep looking at movies that were so good back in the day and just think, let's make a sequel, the likes of, Terminator. They just keep chasing those first two. Funnily enough, James Cameron as well. But it's just just stop chasing that success. Like the first two were, the first one was brilliant because it was an original movie. It was an original idea. And that's what we need. We need more refreshing original ideas. Stop trying to, because we've seen that. We've seen that recipe before. We want something new. But doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. But there you go.
Well, we'll move on now to just a quick discussion about Brian Glover, and then you can tell me what we have in store for episode 3. Welcome back for our final part of Chains. So this is the bit where we're just going to do a discussion about our linking actor. So our link was Brian Glover from American Werewolf in London through to Alien 3. Now, I'll be honest on this one, Jack. Brian Glover wasn't really an actor. I will say I've followed his whole career, until I think he passed away in 1997. So this was a bit of a dive in, and I think as we go through this podcast, we're going to get people that we learn things about, and somewhere you realise they probably didn't sort of do so much. And it was interesting with Brian Glover because in my head, he was kind of like one of those presences that you just sort of knew. I knew who he was, in the 90s and the 80s and whatever. And when I looked into him, it turns out, he didn't actually have a massive filmography. Not in the way that like Jenny Agutter did. There's no roles you can pick out and go, oh yeah, that's a winner one. I think effectively his two biggest appearances, were American Werewolf in London and Alien 3. But yeah, I think for me, anybody in the UK, the main reason it felt like Brian Glover was around all the time, I don't know if you remember these, it was because he was the voice of the Tetley Tea Man.
Simply dive into a box of Tetley, just like Sydney. Tetley make tea bags, make tea.
That's better, that's Tetley.
And so basically, I think because his voice was just it was just everywhere. Like those Tetley tea adverts were on TV all the time, and because he voiced that character, it just felt like Brian Glover was there. But yeah, I looked through, and I think the interesting thing about Brian Glover actually is his background. Did you know that he started as a wrestler?
How about that then?
No, but I am not surprised.
Yeah, he kind of looks like one, right? So he was a wrestler turned movie star 15 years before Hulk Hogan, 20 years before Hulk Hogan tried it. So basically, Brian
He
Glover was a
inspired
British
Hulk
wrestler.
Hogan, basically.
Yeah, he's Britain's answer to Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And I mean, for anybody that loves their wrestling, if you sort of know what your American wrestlers look like, this he's very much what a British wrestler looked like in the 70s. so yeah, but he started as a professional wrestler and then went into acting, and he basically always said that he knew he was going to play a lot of hard men and things like that, but he brought a lot of that kind of just wrestling pizzazz, to his acting. So he had no formal training as an actor, and he just went. But he did loads of stage work, loads of little bit parts. He was in a lot of television, and I think actually the thing that I'd forgotten about, which weirdly. I don't know if this is going to become a running theme, but it's weirdly going to be our second Aid Edmondson and Rick Mayall reference in 2 episodes, is I forgot completely that he played Mr. Rottweiler in Bottom.
Yeah.
Did you have any memories of that character?
Absolutely. He's the neighbour next door. They're stealing his gas. And he falls in love with this woman. It's the real deal or the real thing.
Somebody call the gas board!
Hello, I'm from the gas board.
Bloody, that was quick! Look! My kitchen's on fire!
My God, no wonder your gas bill's so high. How did this happen?
You tell me, face it, you're the bleeding expert!
Where are the other 2?
What other 2?
The 2 loonies from next door. They were here a moment ago.
Here? In my flat?
Aye, large as life.
And they have to sort of, I think they take a sledgehammer to the wall and sneak in, unbeknownst to him, putting the bricks up and steal his gas. But yeah, Rottweiler, a very apt name for the character because he kind of looks like one as well.
Yeah. And I watched some of those kids. I hadn't seen it in Bottom in a long time. So for anybody not from the UK, Bottom was kind of a very 90s show. You wouldn't make it now. 90s show. Aid Edmondson, Rick Mayall, 2 kind of losers that basically just used to beat the crap out of each other.
Live action Tom and Jerry, basically.
And it was just really offensive and rude, and they used to, lots of fanar jokes, but they used to basically it always culminated with them properly beating the crap out of each other.
Yeah. Live action Tom and Jerry, like I say, I absolutely loved it.
Live action Tom and Jerry. That's a great description. But I think he was an actor with an interesting catalogue. I think the other thing that a lot of people would remember him from in the UK is he was in Ken Loach's Kes.
Yes.
That was the film that launched him, and it's funny because really after Kes, apart from a few little bit parts, he didn't do anything really big until he did American Werewolf. And Kes was like 1968 or something, but a lot of school kids grew up on Kes.
Funny enough, in talking about running themes, this isn't our intent. It's completely coincidental, I assure you. The other movie that I saw him in at the time was another werewolf movie, another like original werewolf movie, which was The Company of Wolves. But like you say, he's always Brian Glover in these movies. He never portrays himself to be anything else, whether he's in the Yorkshire Dales or in a prison camp out in space or in a fairy tale-esque werewolf Red Riding Hood tale. He is always Brian Glover.
He's in Jabberwocky as well, isn't he? I think as the sort of dad, but he always played those good rural characters, and kind of either he was either a heavy or he was playing some sort of rural farmer type character. I think actually Alien 3, to give him his due, because he only died like 4 years after it was made, but I actually feel that is a little bit different for him because it's the only thing where he was a very, very, very proud Yorkshireman. It's the only film really where he didn't lean on his Yorkshire accent, because I would say he is very, probably easily like the second most famous Yorkshireman in British acting. I think Sean Bean definitely takes the crown. But it was weird watching Alien 3 and forgetting that he didn't do his Barnsley accent. He's talking with like a kind of RP posh accent, which I don't remember him doing in anything he ever did. So it was I don't know if that was his choice, but the character itself doesn't feel like quite so tough, you know what I mean? He's way more just like a company man, a kind of administrator. He's a very jobs-worthy prison governor.
I think he's just, and what you said earlier, that he hasn't had a big filmography, and we think of him as having a bigger one. It's because I think no matter what he's in, he has such a presence. Your eyes are drawn to him. He owns the majority of scenes that he's in, and because he does it with such a legitimacy, it's just like, this is me, this is Brian Glover. So I think for that reason, because he has such an impact, like he may have had small roles and bit roles, but my God, does he own every single one of them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I mean, obviously he got, I think that presence that probably came from his wrestling. Just working the crowd. I can imagine he must have been brilliant to watch on stage, but it's funny because in a way I sort of compare him very much to almost like Bob Hoskins, but he never had that sort of breakout like Bob Hoskins, became a proper leading man.
That's a brilliant comparison.
Tons of massive roles. Whereas I feel like Brian Glover is a very similar sort of actor. They're very, very raw, almost like what you see is what you get. They're putting it all out there because it's just very honest. He's just almost being himself, I guess. But there's one film that kind of popped out on his filmography that I'd never heard of that I really want to see, because he starred in a version of The Great Train Robbery. But what really surprised me is it was directed by Michael Crichton, and I'm always amazed. I never cease to be amazed by how many films that guy did. Because everyone always thinks of him obviously as the author of Jurassic Park and all these great sort of sci-fi heavy science novels. But actually he directed a lot of films, and
holy shit,
that would be quite interesting. So seeing Brian Glover in a Michael Crichton sort of crime thriller, I quite fancy that.
For sure, I'm definitely adding that to my list. I was not in the know.
That's kind of it, really. I mean, I can't say, unlike Jenny Agutter, I can't really pull out any kind of roles that have jumped out at me, because I think that's the ones really. He was really good in Kes, and I was enjoying rewatching some highlights of that. I think he describes himself as like a fat pasty Bobby Charlton or something in the football scene, and it's great because he kind of does, and he's got hair, which looks weird. But yeah, I think otherwise, I would advise people want to find out more about Brian Glover. Definitely check out the bottom highlights of his performance, and definitely check out Kes. But I mean, anything else from your side?
Nope. I think you hit the nail on the head. The American Werewolf in London and Alien 3 are his most popular movies. But yeah, get involved. Obviously, if you haven't seen either of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel we've kind of nailed his career highlights in the first 2 episodes. So that's Brian Glover pulled up into a vent and eviscerated. So who are we moving on to next, Jack?
onto my choice now, and I think you might know what it's going to be just because I've been, mentioning how much I thought this is the only other character that I cared about in the movie, and I've been mentioning that quite a lot. And I think the reason I like this character so much wasn't necessarily, well, yes, the character, we got a bit of a backstory, but also it was a testament to the acting chops of the actor themselves. So my choice for the next episode is Charles Dance in The Last Action Hero.
Oh, wow. Yes, of course. I'm really excited to see that. Jack, any final words?
No, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for tuning in. As always, I'm eternally grateful. If you've got any movie maniac, film fanatic friends that you think would dig us, by all means, dig us, Christ. By all means, tell them to get involved. I'm from Jacked In. You can find us at jackedinmovies.com. We've got articles, reviews, recommendations for good, bad, new, old, niche movies alike, as well as weekly video shout outs from this gorgeous individual. But yeah, other than that, no. Thanks again, guys.
For Dark Matters, please check out the Dark Matters YouTube channel, including Jack's writing debut, and check out our website, darkmatterfilms.co.uk. Yeah, we still haven't got a sign-off line, Jack, so I think we still need to work on that. Any audience suggestions, please let us know. But the chain continues. Link 3 coming up in a couple of weeks.